Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Minds Camp number 6. I'm Robert, as always, and with me today I have Hai, who is not only incredibly skilled when it comes to AI, but is also a co-founder of an AI startup called WudPecker. And what I want to really dive into and talk to Hai about is obviously AI and how AI is being applied in their startup. And then I know he's been through a funding journey soon, or not that long ago, and I would love to hear how that went in this environment as well. So without further ado, welcome Hai. Welcome to Big Minds Camp.
Oof, thanks, Robert, for the introduction. Hope I can live up to that expectation and hype. But yeah, hello everyone. So my name is Hai, and I handle kind of the business side, the growth side, marketing, and sales a little bit earlier back in the days. But now we're fully product led for the foreseeable future. So thankfully, I don't
The
have to do.
Swiss Army knife of
Yeah,
revenue growth at WudPecker.
yeah.
I love
Hopefully,
it.
Hopefully, once we reach seed or kind of Series A, then maybe I'll switch to a cooler sounding title, CRO. I mean, now it's hip, but I don't know, in 2 years, probably it's gonna not be the biggest kind of hip title anymore. Everyone now is talking about revenue department and
That's
merging
a thing,
sales and
actually. Like
marketing,
when do
alignment.
you start applying the C level titles, and when are you head off and that kind of stuff? I remember I went through a couple of startups, and there's like, depending on the growth of the company, then when do you add that in? But maybe you can take me back a little bit. So I know Woodpecker as an AI startup that is focusing on helping companies do really good meeting notes, right? So basically, you add it in as a note scriber on your meetings, and then it's really good at understanding what's being said, taking notes, summarizing, and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
I know I've seen since the AI proliferation and the craziness of generative AI, there's a lot of startups out there
Hmm.
that is focusing on this. So the first thing I want to ask you about is like, I assume you have an edge, right? So you have a way of saying, we're trying to do something different or distinguish ourselves in this market. So maybe you could talk a little bit about Woodpecker. What are you especially good at, and why are you so good at it?
Mm.
And what do you think in the future the direction you guys is going to take to make sure that you will be the best possible solution for a group of clients or all clients out there?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for steering me back. Already got carried away by talking about titles and stuff. So good that you already did the Woodpecker introduction for me. I think our philosophy is that we really want to extract knowledge and information from discussions. And at the moment, that discussion lies in the data source of online meetings. So specifically Google Meets meeting, Teams meetings, and Zoom meetings. Of course, then when you when you talk about the context of conversations and discussions that like professionals have, it doesn't just stop there. It will, be in Slack, in Teams chat conversations, and in emails and things like that. So essentially we're in a business of knowledge management, knowledge extraction, knowledge storing,
Yeah.
and now it's meeting notes is one of like kind of the way that it manifests. So we want to make sure that the quality of the notes that comes out of these types of conversations really good, but then um, we want to thread uh, multiple data sources so that the summary becomes even better, because when it's only, let's say, one meeting, then the notes and the summary will just be confined in the context of that one meeting. But no one only has one meeting. For example, if you're trying to close a deal with Acme, you're having
Mm-hmm.
multiple conversations, you're threading through multiple different stakeholders. So being able to kind of extract insights when you're layering multiple different conversations over each other, that's a lot more powerful. So when, let's say, you bring in a sales manager, or you're reporting to the head of sales, they'll be able to, at one glance, look at be able to look at the context of everything. So it's much faster than they're having to read through, let's say, 15 different summaries of 15 different meetings. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like where we haven't seen anywhere in the market that are doing that. Maybe there are some that are trying to, but no one has stood out yet. And there's still so much in the user experience that is lacking. Like all the big ones
Yeah.
right now, they're still kind of doing summary on a per meeting level, and their focus is elsewhere. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there left, and we're just getting started.
So just so I understand it, so the angle you are taking is that you want to contextualize the meeting notes of the current meeting together with previous meetings. So being able to see this is actually a meeting that is related to a meeting that was held 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and then use the context of that meeting to create more higher quality notes and note taking of the current meeting. Is that the plan that you're having?
Yeah, so that's like the next step for us. So, in a nutshell, it's like summaries of summaries in a way.
So how will you do that? Will you track that on people, or will you track it on like meeting titles, or will
Mm.
it be a user, do you think, that will go in and say, this is related to this one? Or do you think you can build it into an AI that can kind
Mm.
of understand, this meeting is actually related to a conversation over here?
Yeah, so I think we all have been blown away by how good like AI has been, and it
Yeah.
has the
And how
capability.
fast it develops, right?
Yeah, so it does have the capability, once you tune it the right way, it has the
Yeah.
capability to kind of cluster the context together. So, and there are some very simple examples, like if you're a product manager, and you have like sprints that are related to a specific product, specific feature, we would be able to teach the AI that, hey, it's the meeting and the conversations within these meetings are related to this product. So let's group them together. And whenever we mention a feature or name of a feature that's within that product, there you go. There's a link to connect.
Yeah.
And let's say you're just a general manager who is managing like team of consultant, and you're having like kind of health check one on one with your one of your teammates. Then it's just a matter of threading conversations that you're having between you two, right? So then you're not hopefully missing out on any, let's say, call for help, or any points there where they're expressing stress or problems that they want you to solve that was like 2 weeks ago and you kind of forget about it. So this is kind of helping to prevent that, and that's just a couple of many examples that we would be able to achieve once we kind of really hone the skill of AI to thread the context together. I think another really good example is account base. So if you're closing a deal on Acme or some company, we're threading where AI is able to, in the background, cluster all those meetings related to Acme together.
So in the perfect world, this all happens automatically and error free, right? So it's like it's
Needs to
really good at
happen.
grabbing.
It
It
needs to
needs to
happen
happen.
automatically, because the criteria for a good app, good AI app nowadays, different. Like if you're supposed to tag these stuff, then might as well just say that we're Salesforce or HubSpot. Like these are what CRMs are currently doing. Like those admin stuff that you need to do, and the at least the way I see it is that kind of the threshold has increased, standard has increased, and we want to be at the edge of innovation. We would want to be the ones who are able to meet that criteria or even spearhead that criteria.
So how do you see the transition from where we are now to that level? Is that something you plan in? That I know you don't want to do a tagging platform because then you're competing with HubSpot. I get that.
Yeah.
Salesforce. But in the transition from where we are now until the world where the AI is at a level where
Mm.
almost is doing this at 99.8 probability. It every time the product manager talks to his team, it recognizes this is what we're talking about. It pulls it together. Don't you think before you get to that level that you might need some sort of user intervention where the user could go in and say, this is a repeating meeting and put these together, or are you planning to say we really, really want to avoid that and then just do as much as we can with how the AI is able to do that automatically?
Um, yeah, I think we're there. Like at least,
Is it that good? So
like
you
ours.
it recognizes like almost all of it?
Yeah, ours will be.
Ah, yours are. I like
Yeah.
that. No,
So,
I really, because
mm,
I tested. I can't remember like I have not personally tested them, but I've seen meeting notes from 3 or 4, I think, different meeting note takers, and I was pretty underwhelmed at that point. But I really like your idea, because I think one of the reasons I was underwhelmed by what it could do is that it kind of listened into the meeting, and then, I mean, it basically just did transcripts, and then with a little bit of right, and it's
few
like, then
bullet
then what is
points.
the actual value,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, so it just, transcript and few bullet points of like, oh, this is what happened, and he said this and this and
Yeah,
that.
and then the bullet points were not, it's conversation, so it's really hard to do, right? It's really hard to kind of nail when I'm in a conversation with 3 people. What is it the 3 of us subjectively feel is the most valuable things,
Mm.
and note take that, right? It's I think it's gonna be really hard to get it really, really, really good down the line. But I can really see the idea of, instead of looking at it on a meeting per meeting basis, that if you contextualize it into, this is a repeating meeting on a one-on-one, you could take all of those ones, right, and grab previous conversations to see what was there.
Yeah.
But so your plan in your head now is to say we don't want user input in that, or is it to have user input as a interim step and then moving away, or how do you see that develop?
Yeah, I think the way that we would want user input is only to tell us how bad like the result was. So every time like it's a shitty cluster, let's say, just
Yeah,
give me a thumbs down, and hopefully
yeah,
over time, the frequency of thumbs down that we're seeing becomes less and less.
yeah.
So that's kind of like the way that we want it to be. Um, and yeah, like kind of considering like regarding this idea, I don't think necessarily it's like it's not too like out there. Like when with the explosion of AI, I see so
Mm-hmm.
many good ideas, like so many awesome marketers who really put together a really compelling like idea, and I think so far the product itself in many cases have been underwhelming, right? So
Yes.
it's very easy for me as a AI meeting tool to give a use case of like how perfect, hey, this is perfect summary. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy to construct that, but the difficulty is really in consistently being able to output good summary. And that's where a lot
Yes.
of the prompt engineering and a lot of the kind of thinking goes in the background to make sure that it runs seamlessly. So, yeah, it's if you had that question related to how it's a crowded market and there's a lot of competition, I think I'm not too concerned because it's really
No.
related to the execution of each and every company out there. And I think it's a big market. Um, so we just try to listen to our user and really focus on the user experience.
I totally, I couldn't agree more. And it's like, that's always been one of the things that whenever I talk to basically anyone that wants to listen to me, I, I would always say, don't focus on your competition, right? I think in many companies, they spend too much time focusing on their competition, and it takes effort and focus away from your user. And I think in most companies, almost any company I've ever been involved with in any shape, way, or form, you could spend more time just digging into how you create value for the user. And if you're laser focused on that, you would normally out execute the competition, and then competition take care of itself, right? So I
Mm.
totally agree on that. And I really, another question follow up on that. So you build Woodpecker, it's able now to look through a calendar or look through user roles or look through content being shared in a meeting setting and kind of weave it together with other meetings. Are you thinking about also pulling in other data sources? I'm thinking letting it listen to Slack and maybe matching users up against it so you have notes before or after, conversations before and after, and pull in, or Gmails, or it sounded like what you said is potential in the future
Yeah.
at some
So
point.
there,
You
yeah.
might
So
have enrich the model with those type of sources as well.
yeah. So kind of there. I can kind of describe like broadly three layers. Where we are right
Yeah,
now is we are really perfecting the summary on a per meeting basis. So that's
yeah,
what we have in general availability. And the next step is to start with layering uh, o- different online meetings. So that's where we're threading multiple meetings that have similar context. And then the third one is now we're going beyond online meetings and we're adding in Slack, we're adding in emails, we're adding in Jira and these different types of integrations.
yeah,
So um, the layer of multiple online meetings, that's the next, like in the short term, like in the within one week to 3 months is where we're perfecting that, and then moving
yeah,
forward is adding layers and layers of more integrations because it is a big uh, challenge when it comes to adding in so many, let's say, tokens worth of data, right? So
yes,
if you use ChatGPT, you know that there's a limitation in terms of tokens. So now you need to bring in a new technology, which is called vector embedding. That's where you kind of have to vectorize informations that are similar to each other. So you put them closer together, and then that makes it more efficient for um, kind of the AI to understand that okay, ignore kind of irrelevant clusters of data, look at the ones that are closer together in proximity. So that's like where we also continuously need to perfect. And once we get that
interesting.
out, then we can add like multiples and multiples of more data in.
Do you think that will be the art of the successful people building AI startups? Is how good they are at doing stuff like that, vectorizing data, putting it together, tweaking the model. Do you think that will be where the real competition between AI startup to AR startup will be in how you work with a model like that?
Yes, yes, because the within small number of tokens, like any public model works really well, but
Yeah,
the
and anybody can do it
yeah,
basically.
but the technology for like vector embedding, like when the sheer scale of data increase like by the multiples of the hundreds or thousands, that's
Yeah.
when things start getting tricky. And public models out there, they're like they still need a lot more work. They're still quite a way from actually being something that's usable in kind of general public and for end users.
We're going into the part of the AI understanding where I start to get limited. When you say public models, is there a chance that you could take like some open source code about a public model and you can create kind of your own model? Is that how it works? I'm asking because I
Mm.
don't know.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
or could
So open source, like for example, large language models. There are open source
yeah,
ones from this, yeah, like for example, like Facebook have open source, different open source models out there that you can kind of use. And generally, the quality, of course, is not as good as the ones that you have to pay for. But yeah,
is that something you considered, like doing your own LLM, like taking some open source code and then like setting up your completely own version? It
yeah,
sounds like that's not what you're doing, or no?
yeah, definitely. Like, of course, we want to improve. Um, we have our own kind of use cases where we want to, like, make we want to tailor the language model so that it serves our users the best. So that's kind
Yeah,
of like something that we do have in the roadmap as well.
yeah,
But yeah, I
interesting.
mean, complex stuff. So we don't need to
Yeah, 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 but
too
that's
much
that's
into
why I
it.
love having these conversations, because I don't know, and I think very few people actually, when you get into the weed of things, where it starts becoming more not confusing for me, is like, what is the difference between? It seems to me like many startups out there right now is getting data sources from companies and then basically adding it into ChatGPT, taking an output from ChatGPT and then using that to enrich the conversations, but that the base model is like working on GPT, right? And I'm not quite, I don't quite understand how you would take, the open source code of the language model behind GPT and then pull it into a different environment and then train your own type of language model. But in my head, it's like, if you're able to do that, and you either enriching it with different data sources, and then if you can also add in, what you said before, better vectorization and tweaking, and you could end up with like a completely unique, I assume, language model that Woodpecker is the only one that uses, right? And then that would be, I assume, a pretty crazy competitive advantage, but would probably also be very, very difficult compared to what you have now, right? So I just think that balance is interesting. Like, how would you go
Yeah,
about it, and
and
what do you guys think about it, right?
it's and this is a really interesting topic in a way. Like, okay, do you use what's already out there, or do you try
Yes.
to like build your own? And I think more and more, looking at the speed of development that OpenAI
Yeah.
does, because their sole focus is to improve what's already the best. Like they released the best thing, and now they're improving the best thing. So,
Yeah.
in what world does anyone who's outside of OpenAI think that they can compete with that? So, is it a losing battle almost that you're kind of trying to build your own model from the
Yes.
open sourced ones versus actually just using what's the best out there? So, yeah, I don't have like the perfect answer.
It's interesting, right? It's because it's super high stakes, because it's, yeah. I get that, because OpenAI is just vacuuming data up, right? That you can see that's what they're trying to do, is like, now we understand pictures, now we understand this. They just want to make it as easy as possible for everyone to just load up data into the model, because I think what they're seeing is it's a race, right? So if they manage to vacuum up twice the amount of data than any other model have to learn from, their probability of being able to create better answers would be higher, and they would win and get more data, and then you have this network effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really good point that you have, that when they're doing all of this work in getting more knowledge into the model, how would you ever be able to create something on your own that could
Yeah,
compete with that? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. But
yeah,
my assumption would
because
be that you would either have to like really niche down and have a like super amount of knowledge and really good data sources on like a limited spectrum of stuff where you could create your business.
mm-hmm.
I would assume. But even, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so
It's a good point. So you're, for now, you're leaning towards those guys, and then I assume it's something you're constantly having and evaluating. Is something new happen that would change that decision, right?
yeah, yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. Okay, so I used to be, I won't say negative about AI, but it's like, it used to be. I'm always careful when it's that hyped, right? It was
Mm.
insanely hyped. Normally, I don't like that. I run away from hype like that. But what changed for me is I can see a lot of practical applicability, right? It's really, I'm using it myself now. I'm seeing more and more people that's like, oh, this makes this stuff really easy, and there's some value creation there. Seen from your perspective, you work more with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see, outside of course, Woodpecker doing meeting notes?
Too biased.
Both, how do you use it on your own, but also where do you see the biggest near-term disruption? Where do you see the practical applicability where people can kind of grab it, use it, and improve stuff today to be more effective and to do stuff better?
Yeah, I mean, I can see like I can see that the practical impact is like probably biggest on three kind of area. One is productivity, like it's just
Yeah.
It's crazy. That's like a big blanket, and I'll break it down. Second one is healthcare, and the third one is education. I think productivity, like Woodpecker, falls under that umbrella. Um, and also, for example, like video editing. I don't know. Descript. You know all these
Yes.
different tools. Like for example, if before when I used to edit video a lot. So when I was editing a podcast, let's say a 1 hour, 2 hour podcast, it would take me so long to go through the whole thing and cut out irrelevant part or cut out parts where there was silence or there was too much stuttering. Right now, if you chuck this into Premiere Pro, you chuck this into DaVinci, you chuck this into Descript, it does it right in front of you. Like it's chopping all those unnecessary bits out in matter of minutes. Like that's like real magic happening in front of your eyes.
Yes.
Same with Woodpecker, like note taking. You would usually, if you're bad at note taking during the conversation, you'd have to rewatch
Yeah.
the whole thing, write things down. Now you save basically 2 times the length of the meeting worth of time. So that's like just a huge hit on productivity. And same with programming. Like GitHub Copilot is just ridiculous.
It is.
The quality of the prompt and the code that it writes itself, it's just it's almost like startup and software has to run like on a different speed now that people are using, like with $20, like ChatGPT $20, AI Copilot $20. It's it's like saving almost thousands per month because
So how does that work? Let's dig into the GitHub Copilot. So is it when the programmer is coding, is it then suggesting stuff, or is it also like you just tell it, I want to create this, and then it just spits out done code?
yeah, so how do I say,
It's like an
how do I
auto
give a
finish,
good
right? So
example?
it's
Yeah,
auto
so
finishing your code.
yeah, so it's like you I'm not a programmer, so I'm like really trying to think of a good example with this because, okay, let's say for example, you're programming like logic to connect the Stripe to your own pricing logic,
Got it.
right?
Yes.
So now usually you would have to write out a function that, okay, if a user is paid premium, then you give them this and this and this feature
Got it.
in the
Yeah.
app. Now, when I go into my Visual Studio Code and I just write down that if user equals like premium,
Yeah.
if the user status is premium, and then it starts generating the whole thing. Like it's telling
Yes.
what should each of
That
the
makes sense to me.
attributes be, and you just all you need to do is be amazed, read it, and then you click one button,
And approve.
and then the code is there. And
And then it can also create a user test for it, right? And add it into a testing library and have all of that stuff as well. That makes so much sense to me because that's more of a standard integration, right? So the way you would normally do that is like,
yeah,
that makes sense. Okay, I never thought about that in depth before. But of course, everything that is fairly standardized across the GitHub library, you will be able to basically, oh my God, that's too much
exactly.
sense.
So it saves you
So especially younger programmers, they must be so much more productive.
so much more
Right.
productive. I'm telling you, it's just crazy. Um, yeah, so that's just productivity. And then healthcare. I think if you've seen the kind of Google AI keynote speech, like they're focused on healthcare and using AI to detect and diagnose like even rare sicknesses. I think that's very fascinating, and of course, it's like that's awesome. I'm not. I
Is
don't
it
know.
working?
I
Do you
don't
know
know
if it's
anything
working?
about healthcare. I'm impressed by that. So I
Yeah.
think, of course, like real doctor would have to say whether AI is doing a good job at diagnosing. But they're making those claims that it's doing a good job. So I'm trusting that they are doing a good job. And if Google decides to go and focus and spend so much time on elaborating in that dimension, I would assume that they have done their research. So healthcare, that's a big part.
I'm not sure about that one, but that's because I read a book about, yeah, about AI basically, right? Where they talk
Retail.
about the wicked and the wicked world, the real world, because the long term, yeah. I think in healthcare the error margin is very small, and where I think AI is really really good, where I use it at least, is when for instance, when I need something creative or need somebody to spar with or add stuff in where it's not super critical and where there's not necessarily a right answer,
Mm.
but where it's more like a brainstorming, sparring session. It just adds a ton of value for me. Um, but it's interesting to see how it could be. For me, I think it will be. I would assume that it becomes a tool for the doctors, right? So it's like it's able to learn faster, and then maybe saying, "Hey, doctor, we spotted this. There's an 80% probability, or bring your attention here and stuff." But I would assume we're a long way away from the AI just being able to replace the doctor. You know what I'm saying? I think
I don't
I
think
think it
it.
would take a
Yeah, I don't think they would replace doctors by any means. But yeah, like the
no. So you have the same feeling, right? It will be input to the doctor, and then the doctor still making the decision, but
exactly.
probably increasing what. Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if it means that you need fewer doctors to provide more accurate diagnosis, one might say that it is, in a way, replacing some headcounts of doctors. But, you know, it's-
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. If you get to that level, that's true. Then you could see yeah. Then on the other side, our population is dropping radically, right, globally. So,
oh,
and I think
yes,
in 50 years, the amount of people who are really old compared to people who are in working age is going to look terrible. So we're probably going to
yeah,
need that productivity at some point down the line. Yeah,
definitely, definitely. But
that's
yeah,
nice. You mentioned education as well. How do you see this impact education?
like, like, I'm a bit torn on this. You know how when you're a kid, you
Hmm.
need to learn how to do arithmetic, even
Yes,
though calculator already exists.
yes,
You need to memorize like the multiplication table and things like that. So, but there's already a calculator. So in a way, technology replaces your need to do that, but you
hmm,
still need to learn it to, I don't know, to help your brain grow in a
yeah,
proper way or something. And it's almost the same with Woodpecker in a way that, it's replacing note taking. But even though people do claim, and I do see the benefit of taking notes yourself because writing, in a way, is thinking. So I always recommend people that if they, are good at note taking, and they still want to continue just note taking themselves, that's fine. Um, but yeah, like I also, even though I'm in AI, but I don't want to, of course, be 100% reliant on technology. So that's also some soul searching that I need to do. But now, when talking about education, for example, writing a master's thesis, 100-page master's thesis, I think
yes.
when I did it, took me like 6 months to do um, a master's thesis. But now, if I were to do it all over again, in with access to GPT-4, like I can
Yeah.
get 100-page out in same quality within 2 weeks. Like it's just ridiculous.
But here would be my question, because this is the interesting, because I think we agree on this actually. The level of learning you're acquiring in your mind, you know, by doing that will be less than if you have to write it out. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of, I assume you need to go to a deeper level of understanding to actually write it out, which
Mm.
creates knowledge, which means that the post process, you would probably end up having less knowledge about the subject
Mm-hmm.
compared to what you had before.
Mm.
So don't you think it ends up becoming a discussion about basically how do you acquire knowledge as a human? How do you get knowledge in?
But here's the thing, though. Okay, I might agree with you that I would get less like deep learning compared to if I were to do it 6 months. But then again, if I were to complete the same thing in 2 weeks, I have another. What am I doing for another 5.5
five
months,
and a half month.
right? So
Yes. Well, that's
it's
a
like
good point.
we're learning different things now. Like when with AI, it gives you time to learn different types of knowledge, and I don't know what that is yet,
No.
but it's like we adapt. So unless, of course, you can argue that if I were to do it in two weeks and then 5.5 months, I'm spending partying or spending that allocation of money that was supposed to be for writing 6 months worth of thesis, and I'm
Yeah.
just blowing that on parties.
Whatever.
Yeah, then sure, it's reductive. But if I'm a productive person, if I'm motivated, I'm driven,
Yes.
then I'm spending that 5.5 months educating myself in a different way because these things that used to take so much time, it's compressed now. So I'm moving
Yeah,
on.
so it's a 12x productivity gain, right? All of a sudden, what you did in 6 months, you do in 2 weeks, and then the
Yeah.
remaining part of it you use to do something else. I agree. Yeah,
So,
it's interesting whether or not. For me, I think it's such a good point, and I think it's really interesting from an educational level on how it's being implemented into education, right? Because you probably need some really thoughtful educators thinking about, okay, so now we have a new environment. It's kind of like the example, or the way I view it is, I mean, it's almost like the computer, right? I mean, before you had an Excel spreadsheet, you would have, like, an accountant would sit there with a book, like a double binder, right, and
mhm.
writing down numbers.
Yeah.
Then along come the personal computer and a spreadsheet, and the work of the accountant just changed massively, right? They were able to do a lot more, a lot faster.
Mhm.
I think for me, at least that's how I view it. I know a lot of people see it as a much, more like a bigger thing, but for me, it is very much just the next level of toolkit, right? So before we didn't have AI, now we have AI, and then all of a sudden now it's like every human had, the possibilities of what you can and cannot achieve, in coding and productivity and like so many different arenas is changing, right? And people are gonna be much more, yeah. I think it's interesting, but how do you then put that into education? I also think it's fascinating, right? Because I do believe that in order to acquire knowledge, right, in order to get that, for me, that's why I do notes. So I do notes on my phone. When I read a book, I force myself to do notes. When I have an important part of it, I read it, and then I'm like, I go into this note app, and I'm kind of,
Yeah.
I just do some notes because the process of summarizing it and writing it out, something happens in my brain that means that I contextualize it. I put it up against other things I have in my head, and normally I create some sort of story and I remember it in a better way and all of that stuff. It's kind of like I'm merging it into what is already there. And I think, there's a risk that that is not happening with AI, but then, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. A lot of change is coming. I don't know how it's going to look, but for sure a lot of change is coming, right?
Yeah, I'm just excited because, yeah, of course, like, uh, it's, yeah, I think it can be quite nerve-wracking for a lot of people. Like everyone in every field is thinking if they're gonna get displaced or replaced by AI. But if you keep an open mind and you continuously learn new skills, you should be fine. So the risk is only with people who don't want to change. And I can see that more.
But that's the same. It's the same story, right? I remember, like, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago when Elon Musk said, in 6 months we will have self-driving cars.
Mm,
Every Tesla will be level 5 self-driving.
yeah.
And I remember I saw like webinars and stuff where people were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? All of the truck drivers, they will be, everyone will be out of a job, and,
Yeah.
it's all going to be insane. And even if that happened and it became self-driving, I'm like, isn't that the same as like moving from horses to the internal combustion engine? Moving from manual labor to like the steam engine, moving from the steam engine to, it's like I see it as, I agree, it's a big transition, but for me, I more see it as like the personal computer, the internet. It all just added in so many different opportunities, different ways of doing stuff, right? And you can kind of, there's people that jump on that.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, exciting. What can I do now? And then there's people that is really scared that something is going to happen. But I haven't seen anything, at least yet, from AI where I'm like, this is completely different. I agree. It's a pretty powerful technology. It's gonna change a lot. But the internet has also been like pretty freaking powerful compared to how the world looked before, right?
Yeah, I mean, job and creatives are actually pretty in danger in a way. Like, I remember, or quite recently, there's a protest on screenwriters, that they're being
Yeah, I
paid.
saw. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, like and there's I think a lot less demand now for like content writing agency, for example. So in marketing, let's say. So those are real areas that AI have been like creating a disruption. But then again,
Yes.
people find things to do. So as long
Yeah,
as
and it's the same, isn't it? The same. What about the person that all of the people that had a really good living, putting new horseshoes on horses in New York City?
mm, so,
When the horses were, you know, when they were replaced by cars, they lost their job. What about all of the independent bookstores prior to Amazon? You know how many hundreds of thousands of people had a mom and pop shop where they sold books? They
yeah,
don't exist anymore. I mean, it's isn't that just progress, or
it is, it is. But of course, like
it's hard?
okay,
I'm not
it's
saying that it's not
yeah,
hard.
it's
I
easy
mean, being a
for
screenwriter for your entire life, it must be really. It. I mean,
it's
that's
easy
serious. That
for I guess it's easy for us to say if we're a bit more that we are in the mindset of like like we're in the mindset of always improvement and yay to innovation. And again, I
yeah,
don't have any family, I only have to care about myself, right? So I have
yeah.
quite little to lose. But I can see, for example, 20 years from now, where I'm maybe if I decide to settle down and become a lot less kind of in tune with technology, maybe then I'll be like, oh, I have so much to lose. Can life not change? Can you stay the way it is? So I don't know.
But I have a feeling that's a mindset. You're not gonna, even when you have kids, you're still gonna. I have 4 kids. It hasn't changed, and but that's. I think that's a learning journey for some people. Um, but if you go back to the screenwriters, I don't know any screenwriters, so I have no clue. But
Mm,
my gut feeling is that you would have top 5, 10% of screenwriters right this second are figuring out how do I utilize AI to be
mm,
like new new level screenwriter.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure you'd find when we look back 3 years into the future to about this point, you would find some screenwriters that are just acing how do I use AI as a superpower for me to just create the best freaking screenplays out there. Because there must be some combination where you can marry the storytelling genius of some of these screenwriters and the craft of screenwriting with the power of AI. And that intersection between those two,
Mhm.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's, so it's brutal, I know, but it's also like that. There must be someone out. The same we both know Timo that I interviewed on this one. When you talk SEO, content creation, I mean that entire industry is going to be completely upside down with
Hmm.
with AI. But there must be so much knowledge about fundamentally SEO, on a first principle level. SEO is saying there's a human that need help with like a certain thing, and we try to feed them the best answer, right? And then
Yeah.
that takes a lot of human knowledge and understanding. And I'm sure there will be people like Timo and others that really ace just maximizing what you can get out in AI to kind of solve that equation to the best possible way, and they would just be massively successful. It must be the same with screenwriters
Yeah.
and with the other areas as well, the note takers of the world, the
Hmm.
woodpeckers.
Hmm. Yeah, we try to be, but it's just because I do see one kind of like I do see one downside in a way that those who are already good with the tool that is AI, like they'll be so
Yes.
much better. But then it really creates this rift between the juniors and the seniors. Um, Like if,
Yeah, we risk having a lot of centralized value creation, right?
hmm because if you're honestly like if you're let's say if you're a mediocre content creator, if you're a mediocre storyteller or mediocre blog writer, you don't know how to use ChatGPT to the way
Mm.
that like it will be only as good as you are in a way.
Yes,
If you can't tell
true.
it to get better, or you don't know what is the standard of goodness of high quality, then you're not going to be able to craft something like that. So it's really like in the hands of like the seniors. They know what's good stuff. Now they have something that can 100x their output. So now all the seniors will be able to replace the need to have any new
Yes,
juniors coming
yes.
in. So now it's almost like if I were to be on the side of really optimizing the dollar of my like every dollar that I have, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even bother hiring juniors to kind of train them because it's just there's no need for it. So it's almost like
You'd rather have one senior, give
yeah,
that person the
because they can
tools, and then the expectation is that instead of being 5x of a junior developer, they can be 10, 20, 25,
yeah, and I'm
50x of a
glad
junior.
I'll gladly pay you double of what you were making because you would be producing that quality at 10x, 20x anyways, right? So it's almost like there needs to be like a regulation that mandates a company to hire juniors almost because otherwise if if a goal of a company, if a goal of the executive or founder is to maximize the profits and the shareholders benefit, then it's in my interest to do that, right? Why would I need juniors? So it's almost, yeah, it's like just an interesting kind of
It is
thing
super
to think
interesting.
about.
Super interesting. So time is flying. I want to talk to you about your fundraising journey as well, because I know the environment of fundraising now is tough. Let's be honest, right?
Mm.
I think there's a lot of startups struggling out there. A lot of them. But you managed to raise funds. I saw a graph over how many people you talked to and how many funds you reached out to. Could you just, try to walk me through what was your approach going into this and
Mm.
how did you do it? Because with the amount of outreach I saw you put in, you must have been really systematic about how did you do it, and maybe share some learnings for somebody else who will be sitting out there thinking about raising funds.
Yeah, for sure. And
What's your
maybe I could also kind of summarize a little bit the graph so people know what we're referring to. So I did. So I went to I forgot the name of the Crunchbase. Yeah, went to
yeah,
Crunchbase, pulled out like 1,000 like pre-seed, seed level VCs and angels investors, and then I really
yeah.
looked through like every single one of them. Like, what is their thesis? Who do they invest for? Like, what is like if
Did you do
they're
it manually?
yeah, that's something I needed to do manually. If there's a tool, an AI tool, and it's not that difficult to build an AI tool to do that,
No.
to look through, like actually now I think about it, this was pre GPT-4 code interpreter. I think
Ah.
they changed the name of code interpreter now to be what was it? So I can kind of tell you exactly what it is. Oh God. Again,
So
another
you
thing
think
that would
now
have
you'll be
saved
able to
me
just
like
load it in, or?
yeah, so there's if you go to GPT for advanced data analysis. So
Hmm.
this is like in beta. Now it used to be called code interpreter, but then OpenAI realized that that was a pretty bad name. So now it's advanced data analysis. And basically what it is that if you put in a file, an Excel sheet, uh, it will be able to go through and analyze the whole thing. So what I now, if I were to go through this again, what I would do is I would have an export of
Yeah.
1,000 row of these angels and VCs, and then have the about section of them,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would tell ChatGPT to be like, hey, pull out only the angels and the VCs that are interested in B2B, SaaS, AI kind of investment and startups.
Yeah.
And then it would pull out, hopefully the same thing that I pull out, which is like
Yeah.
500 to 600 like qualified leads.
Yeah.
Then, armed with that lead, scrutinize. Then I was thinking about what way should I approach them. Should I send them an email, or should I do LinkedIn, or should I cold call them? And I think from if I'm thinking from VC perspective, like they're always looking for startups. They're always looking for
Mm-hmm.
good startup. That's the problem, not just any. So I figured that my LinkedIn profile was kind of colorful enough, and I was quite vocal about the journey and sharing a lot of details. So I figured my best shot would be to send them a LinkedIn message through a connection. So that's what I did, and the basically the way that I said it is that, hey, I will, if you, this is what we do, this is our traction. If you're interested, I'll send you the pitch deck. So kind of, I
Yeah.
don't want to like pitch slap them too hard.
No, 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 no.
Yeah. So just that. And then, yeah, like a handful of people replied, I think around 60, 50, 60. I don't fully remember, but around that much. And yeah, finally, I think toward the end, we have about three term sheets offered to us, and we took in all three. So now we're backed by three VCs, one from Estonia, one from Denmark, and one from Finland. So
Nice.
that's like a bit long summary of the.
No, no, I think it's nice. I think it's also showing the numbers. That's a lot of work, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you automate some of it, it's still quite a bit of work, right?
Yeah, it's a decent amount of work. So it took us 3 months exactly from the moment where we started strategizing what do we put in the pitch deck to the moment where we got money in the bank. So roughly 100 days. And it was a.
Any surprises in the questions you got, the pitch deck? Let's say you are talking to somebody who's just about to do this. What would you tell them to put more emphasis on, and what would you tell them to put less emphasis
Mm,
on?
yeah. So it's really dependent on, again, like the nature of the company, yeah. But I
Yeah.
think one thing that I will always tell, which regardless of the company, which is like put a lot less emphasis on market sizing. That's such a like crappy exercise,
Yes.
honestly. Um, it's so theoretical. I hate it.
Yes.
In this version of our pitch that we sent out to 500 or sent out to whoever accepted it, we didn't even bother putting market size. It's just such
No.
yeah, we just didn't.
Did they ask for it? None of them asked for it, right?
None of them asked for it. Like
No, no. Because
if
it's a bullshit. Nobody
yeah,
cares. Yeah.
it's
It's Excel
it's
gymnastics, right? It's
yeah,
like the
I've
market
real
size is this, okay, but what solution is it? Who are you targeting? Are you talking near term, long term, short term? I mean, you can just you
yeah.
can just pick, right?
It's because it's almost like the implication of you trying to raise VC money is that the market should be already big enough. Like, yeah. So just don't even bother wasting time like measuring, okay, this. I realize that that's
No, I
only
agree.
they only do that in pitching competition because it's more for general public, right? They want to give that kind of sense of like, oh, this is how big the opportunity is. But VCs, I'm already targeting people who are in the industry. Like they don't need that stuff. They already know the
But
opportunity.
they're looking for traction, right? Isn't number
Yeah,
one what they're looking for? That's my sense normally when I talk to VCs. It's like, A,
exactly.
am I talking to people I believe, is in this and have the head to pull it off? And then B, do they have traction? Like real traction? Have you talked to
Yeah,
customers? Do you have people signing up? That type of stuff. And then C, do I believe this is executed really well, that there's some high level out there, like in the future. But my sense is, and that's, also when I talk to startups, it's like there's so many that have really awesome idea and great market and all of that stuff. But then if you haven't actually done anything, it just has such a high value where if you turn it around and you have somebody who might not have spent a lot of resources thinking about what's the market capitalization and what is the big
Mhm.
vision, but have actually done shit, have talked to customers and have created something and have moving parts, normally I think that would be a bigger indicator of success, right?
Yeah, and yeah, traction is the most important thing, and the only people who raise money without having users or things like that is because they have tractions in their career. If they work for Google, if they work for
Yeah,
any
exactly.
of
They
the,
have the story.
yeah, so then it's fine. That is a different type of traction, right? But if you're anything like us, like we didn't we're quite young, so we haven't achieved like anything that's like Google level, things like that.
No, no.
So we needed to prove, and that's what we did. We did spend a year just bootstrapping and did go for getting that traction, getting, I think around the time when we were starting to raise this round, like this June, so about five 5 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
we had around 3,000 users. So we had a real product, was working,
Mm-hmm.
and there were people using them. I'm getting message daily
Yes.
from our users. So that's when we felt like we were ready. But anything before that, it's not worth it. And I think people, yeah, like you can kind of you can kind of tell when you're ready. So that's how we approached it, and I think that's how I believe everyone should. And especially, I can give advice more on the software business because we're in the software business,
Of
particularly if
course.
you're product led. Is that um, nowadays, like if it was any indication about the power of ChatGPT and Copilot, it's like the standard for what's accepted as an MVP has changed so much. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't do the thing where in the book 0 to 1 says like, oh, just give people shit that doesn't work, and it's like get feedback.
Mm.
We're past that. That's like in the 2000s. Now people have been using software. Like software
Yes.
has become, everyone has a tech stack now, so they
Yeah.
know what's the standard of a product, like what's the standard of a good software, and they're not going to touch stuff that is wonky.
So you think the demands for the MVP has increased basically, right?
Yeah, like the quality of the MVPs needs to be fast, or yeah, or if you make something that's not work, like it's not usable, you need to make that happen in a matter of days, not like two, three
Yes.
months, and then you have an MVP that's buggy. In 2, 3
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
now, you need to have a functional app, and if you don't have that, that means your uh, the tech part of your team is not solid enough, and so then it's more about the people, and I think like Y Combinator has like Y Combinator, one of the biggest, well, the biggest accelerator and incubator in the world. I think they have a hard requirement that one of the co-founder must be deeply tech
Yeah.
engineer
Yeah.
driven.
Must be tech. Must be a product guy. Yeah.
Otherwise, don't even
I heard that
bother.
as well.
So you can't be two business guys anymore and like slap on a pitch deck.
Not if you want to go to Y Combinator. No, but that makes sense, right? You have to, and I assume they build it off their data that you need somebody who owns that part of it. That's the when you talk software, that is the value creation, right? That is where the value is. You need to build a piece of software that do something that has value and that can run over
Yeah.
and over again, right?
And I believe that as well, truly myself, because if you're not a coder, if you're not a product person, and you're hiring someone to do that, like you don't know if they're lying to you or not. If there's a
No, no.
blocker that, oh, this feature, why is
But
it
that's
not?
not just within coders. That can be in many different domains, right?
Yeah, so like if you're not an expert, like they'll bullshit you and you won't
Yes.
know. You're like, oh, what can I do? Who do I go to verify if this is
But
true?
once you guys grow, I can imagine I can tell you that does not go away. Try hiring a CFO if you have a just semi-complex financial setup. It's like very quickly you're gonna have to, and then when you're doing the hiring process, like how do you figure out who's better than the other one?
Uh,
How do you?
we're so
We
bad at
we had
hiring.
an
I'm telling you, it's so difficult to hire.
yes. We could
Like,
talk a lot about hiring.
that's gonna be a whole nother podcast. So
Yes, yes.
I'll
It's
just stop
horrible.
there. Like, it's too
And
so.
the price of getting it wrong is so severe, and it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, hiring is just super difficult. I do want to change gear a little bit because I saw you posted something as well about a single disgruntled user. That because you guys were so young, really had it seemed like really had an impact on your business and what you could do and etc. And it actually made me think because this is not the reason I picked up on it is because this is not the first time that I see it, and I'm older than you, obviously, so I
Just a little
remember.
bit, just a little
I,
bit.
I just a little bit. I remember the years back in the days. Companies could treat users however they wanted,
Mm,
almost, because the road for a user to share a bad experience with the world
mm,
was very long, and that meant that even if you as a company just ridiculed your users almost, you could get away with it for years and years.
mm,
Then along came social media. Every single person now have
mm.
a broad audience potentially. So if you hit a nerve, I remember I read a book with a guy who bought a computer from Dell,
Mm,
and they just treated him horribly, right?
mm, mm.
And then he wrote a blog post that was called "Why Dell Sucks," and it got so popular and so read that at a point in time, if you went in to Google and you said Dell, enter, the
That's
first organic post was
oh
"Why Dell Sucks." And I was like, oh, now you don't get to that level unless Dill has done that to a lot of people that
yeah,
engaged with his blog post, right? So
yeah.
let's be fair. But actually, Dell reached out to him and they were like, we really want to make this right. But here's the backside of that coin, right? The backside of that coin is that you can have disgruntled people that is mad at you as a company, not because you did something wrong, but just because that could be a
Mm,
mismatch with the product, or it could be wrong expectation setting, or it could also be a little percentage of users is just angry people that like just don't like the world. I'm sorry, but I've seen that sometimes where you have somebody where you're like, okay, that is you're acting crazy. But these crazy people, they now have like a lot of ways they can really hit at a company, right?
yeah.
So share what happened with you guys, and then I would like to get your opinion on: are we at the right place? Is the balance right between users being able to share their
Mm,
experience
mm.
and you know calling out bad companies, and the opposite way around, seen from your perspective?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what happened? So basically, we had
From your perspective, right?
yeah,
I can only share your perspective, but we
yeah.
don't have the user on. So from your perspective, what happened?
Yeah, so what happened? So kind of just recap a little bit. So when we had our kind of or we never had Google reviews before. And then the
No.
first one came along and there's this guy, Kevin Malone, which is an alias, by the way, of
Yeah.
very popular character in The Office. And I think that's a important component, which I'll kind of mention later. But yeah, this guy he put a 1 star review, and saying that the product sucks, quality of the summary was crappy, and I don't want to use it basically.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what happened, and and it kind of I chose to basically call him out on LinkedIn, basically. More like a joke. That hey, can you like take this down because it will be very problematic for me. Uh, yeah, kind of like that. But honestly, it was really a joke. Uh, I didn't even I don't even consider kind of Google reviews as one of important kind of review channel for us. That's why I was so
No.
lenient with that. So in
Yeah.
my
Okay.
spare time, I was doing that. But okay, so that's what happened. And then he did another. He edited the review and say like, oh, I was threatening him uh, to remove the review, even though
Yeah.
in that response video, I was like, hey, can you please? Otherwise, the board of directors will have my head. But I am the
Yeah.
chairman of the board. So again, it was all like a bit of a joke. Um, and then he said that, yeah, and then I pathetically asked for my followers to uh, write good reviews instead. And that's why all these good reviews is coming to Google reviews. So don't listen to those. Which, by the way, all of those reviews are real people, whereas Kevin Malone is hiding under an alias, right? So
How did it have an impact on you guys having that in there, other than the noise, of course?
having the which one?
Yeah, so him doing that, have you heard from other users? Has it impacted you? Do you have anything where you can see, this has had a
Mm.
impact on the business?
Yeah. So I kind of want to break this, like I want to get into analysis mode and kind of
Yeah.
break this down into like 4 or 5 different dimensions. I think the first one is like personally, I have nothing against him, right? I think people are entitled to having negative reviews,
Yes.
like negative feedback. That's completely fine. It's just that that one was definitely on the side of like hate because it wasn't a
Yeah.
productive feedback, and if he was actually wanting to use the tool and kind of get better or kind of help us get better, he would have messaged me something constructive,
Yeah,
or
of
he would
course.
have left a constructive, like constructive criticism. Sure, I can take the 1 star, but so
Yeah.
that one was not any of that at all. So I can tell that like Kevin, he never he doesn't understand what it's like to have a startup, to have something that's like really high stake and
Oh, no.
you kind of do something like that.
But he's not Kevin, right?
So,
It's
uh,
somebody else.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
that's kind of so personally it's fine. It kind of took it as a we kind of wanted to spin it as a joke. So at the very least, we have something fun that comes out of it. And then the second part is the product side. Yeah, like the product isn't perfect, but it works majority of the time. So the time that it doesn't work is when there is some mismatch in the user setting, and that's usually when people reach out to us so that we can kind of understand what is the problem, because then we would be very quickly able to fix it. For example, if it's like the language part, so what happens is if you put, for example, English US or English uh, GB, like the UK version, like it produces different quality of transcript. So you need to be really correct there. So
Hmm.
there are various reasons why summary might not like be good. But once we kind of
Yeah, but I also think,
it's good.
sometimes it's just not the right match and the expectations is wrong, right? And I agree that, of course, if you have a bad experience with the product, you should be able to just put it out there. But to me, it just seems outsized, right? And the
Yeah.
question for me is more like, when you have somebody where it is outsized, where it's like, okay, there's a mismatch, you are allowed to just say, hey, I don't like this product and I think it's shitty. But when it comes to the threatening and changing and telling everyone else this is just friends, it seems like there's more to it. And my question is more like, do you know, for you guys, did it have an impact? you know did that is that anything you've been able to measure anywhere, or has it just drowned out because then everyone else is really happy about the product?
Yeah. So there was, yeah, like I think there was there's one more additional 1 star that came
Yeah.
to Google review after that. And that was the one where they were saying that the product is all right, but the way that we handled feedback was unprofessional. So,
Hmm.
and that review did get some traction. So it did get like I think 10, 11 likes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one I will take, that sure. Like it did seem then that the way that we were handling it seems like we were just making TikTok videos and not really taking in the feedback. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I was taking that in. So that's why we were thinking about well, we basically kind of stopped the little kind of show in a way that, I really kind of wanted it to go further because I saw it as a growth opportunity. Um,
Yeah.
because nowadays, the way that brands are handling this type of nasty feedback is, you know, evolving it into some sort of beef or roast. Like this is quite a popular kind of form of media. For example, especially on TikTok, where people are stitching each other's TikTok, and then kind of building replies on top of that.
Interesting.
And that does get a lot of traction. And so I was looking at it as a growth opportunity that, hey, if we're building a story, right?
Hopefully not to the point where you wanna get bad experiences to
Yeah,
create the
definitely,
roasting video.
definitely. No, no. Like it needs to, of course, be justified, right? That
Yeah, of
he
course.
was coming from a place of unreasonable, and we were
Yes.
coming from a place of reasonable. And I
Yeah.
do still think, and I
And
believe,
that's why you saw there was an opportunity there. Yeah.
yeah, right? So then it's like we're building a story arc. So then it's kind of nice that there's like one side, the other. Sure, there can be people hating us, and there can be people backing us, and there were really people backing us. The people that actually use us and really love us. So two sides, and yeah,
Yeah.
build story,
It's
growth
a
opportunity.
classic PR opportunity, right?
Yeah, right. And it was organic.
You
Like,
divide people into haters and lovers, and then you let them fight it out, and that creates all of the attention.
yeah, and like there were people even asking me like, hey, did you make this stunt? It's brilliant. And it's no, it was organic. So that was such a opportunity that I wanted to drive it further. But here's the next part. It's the branding, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't want it. We didn't want to be known or kind of viewed
Have that as a brand.
as guys who are just messing around, because that was the
No, no.
perception when people were saying like, oh, when that one review was saying that I was unprofessional, and people were agreeing to that. So then there started to be this kind of we started weighing pros and cons a little bit. And okay, is it worth kind of pursuing growth at this potential stake that the brand might be viewed a bit too much on the side of immaturity. So ultimately, as a company, we decided to not follow that. Even though I still kind of on my end,
It
I kind of
hurts.
wanted to see it play out. I kind of want to see
I
it play
think
out.
that's the right decision. I have to be honest because I mean, if you look at who is your potential customers, right? That's business to business people. You're probably gonna want to talk to a lot of senior people about how to increase productivity across their large corporations. And
Mm.
my experience, at least, is that you you just want to be on the serious side of things if you start talking to these companies, right?
Yeah, but here's the other thing, right? So I don't think brand is that static in a way that, okay, if we are associated with something that's slightly bad or controversial, it will stay with us. Especially that we're a startup, we're so young, and the
Mm-hmm.
brand essentially is basically me and my CEO Encore. Like what Woodpecker is us, and
Yeah.
I look at it more instead of from a snapshot. It's more of a continuum. It's more of an arc. And Woodpecker is young, so are we, but that means that there's room for improvement. So
Mm-hmm.
we could also be looking at the like storytelling arc, a very archetypal type, which is this young, let's say young teenager who is
Mm.
mature at times, but then overly silly and a bit cringy at other times. And then that teenager grows up to be more mature, sophisticated, and professional. And that can be done over the span of year and a half easily. So it was really kind of, and that's like a little bit of a risky take that I wanted to try. And Woodpecker is about taking risk. But I think the reason why we didn't go through with it is because the traction wasn't really worth it yet. Like if
No,
this
no.
was blown out into hundreds or thousands of people who are caring and who are viewing it, then we might pursue it further. So
Yeah,
this was this case where the upside was a bit uncertain, whereas the risk was quite high. So I think that was
yeah.
kind of where we ended it. And I think, yeah, yeah. So that was kind of like the rationale.
I like that. I agree with it. I think in the when you look at a brand as a continuum and not necessarily as a static thing, I agree. I think people underestimate what you can and cannot get away with as long as you do it. Um, I would say it with high integrity. You know, you can be a little bit out there, try some things if you're really willing to then also say, hey, you know, we tried something, we failed, we're sorry, we're moving on, and actually doing that in a proper way, right?
Yeah.
I like the idea of the guerrilla marketing. You know, trying some things that might be borderlining on what others would not be willing to do, because in the end, what counts for you guys is, do you get the attention of people who can see value and get value from your product? And if you find an avenue where you can do that better, cheaper, faster than somebody else,
Mm.
that's a huge competitive advantage. So there's no doubt that there's some in the gray zones there is
Yeah.
value, but it's
It,
also a dangerous game to play, right?
it
So
was.
it's nice.
So this.
Hi, we're at the end. Time is up. So I actually just want to thank you very much for spending time talking with me. This has been really, really educative for me, learning more about AI. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining. And if people want to follow Woodpecker, want to follow you, want to see you, best places to do though is where is.
It's on LinkedIn. So Woodpecker, and on my personal account and our CEO's account. So mine is Haita, CGO of Woodpecker, and then
Yeah,
Ankur Dahama, CEO and co-founder of Woodpecker. So that's
nice.
where we're the most vocal.
So go follow Hi.
Mhm.
Go check out Woodpecker
Yeah.
if you
Last thing,
want really, really, really good meeting notes.
yeah, and I should plug also
Any
the website. Yeah, woodpecker.io. There you go.
Woodpecker.io. You have to put that in as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Hi. Sorry. I really appreciate it.
Thank
See you,
you.
man.